Was the biggest mistake that I have made selling cars. Engine rebuild job. I decided to suck it up. It's taken 6 months, 12 grand's worth of supercharger, 5 grand's worth of engine rebuild. Oh! Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in, and hopefully you'll find this tale of woe somewhat interesting today. So, I want to talk about a time that I bought a car, modified it, thought I was doing the right thing, and it cost me a fortune. It was the biggest mistake that I have made selling cars up until about a year ago, but I'll tell you that one another time. So, are you ready? Get yourself a coffee, get yourself comfortable. This won't take long, and I'm hoping you're going to enjoy it. I certainly did not enjoy it at the time. Let's just rewind back to August 2021. I've been doing this job for 2 or 3 years. We've got through COVID. We've started on a few performance cars. Everything's going fairly well. And I, as usual, went out and bought a performance car. Now, this particular example was a 2012 on a 62 plate Mercedes-Benz W204 6.2 litre V8 naturally aspirated C63. Oh, coupe. Beautiful car. Low owners, it'd done about 50,000 miles, and it was in really, really nice condition. It was also silver, which you don't see many silver ones. And people said, oh, silver's a bit of a boring colour, but it sort of reminded me like the old SLs. There's something quite honest and quite nice and clean about it. Anyway, that bit wasn't the problem. So I went out, bought the car, did a deal with this private seller in Wakefield, lovely bloke, bought it, brought it back to the unit, and I drove the car for a couple of weeks. So normally I'll take a car home on a night or maybe 2 nights, just sort of get a feel for them, make sure they're all right. But C63, I tend to drive them for a couple of weeks because I'm a greedy little piggy and I like them. Anyway, I put the car up for sale and we've sold it to a bloke about a month later called Ian. Now, Ian comes down, really, really nice guy, didn't mess about on price, and he had a part exchange that I wanted to buy off him, which was a BMW M3 E90? E91? You get confused with those two, someone will correct me in the comments, I'm sure, but it was a 2-door coupe, finished in a beautiful colour with the right wheels. It had the M Performance exhaust on it, lots of really nice spec. So, we did a deal. Fast forward to about a month later, Ian rings me up, he's got a problem with the C63. Now, as a rule, I don't tend to have issues with those cars. They tend to be fairly bulletproof. The only thing to really look out for them now is like the rocker covers tend to leak and they're quite hard to get hold of. They're about 300 or 400 quid. It's not that easy of a job. But other than that, they tend to be all right, and I still like buying them now. However, they're hard to find, a decent one. However, Ian's got a problem with the car where when he's got it in comfort mode, the revs just feel like they're a bit all over the place. Now, on a C63, that does tend to be the case. So when you're in comfort, it tends to feel a little bit sluggish, a little bit old-fashioned. It's a big fat V8 with an fairly old gearbox on it. I said, Ian, it's probably not a problem, mate. I wouldn't worry about it. But if you bothered, bring it back in and I'll take a look. Ian brought it back in and said, look, I'll leave it with you, Rob. You drive it. You tell me what you think. Now, I don't know whether or not he just got into my head on this one, or whether or not there's actually a problem with the car. But for me, it kind of felt like a little bit sluggish in comfort mode, but even now I'm not convinced there's a problem with the car. However, what I did was, the car had been mapped. I told him about this anyway. I said, look Ian, let me go take the map back off it. So I took it to a Mercedes-Benz specialist. They flashed the new software into the engine. They flashed the updated software into the gearbox. And they also did a gearbox oil change. So we kind of did everything we could do gearbox related. I took it back and it still felt a little bit kind of just off somehow. And again, I don't know whether or not it's just in my head. So I gave it back to Ian. I said, let me know how you get on with it. See how you get on. So he took the car and he rung me back in about a week and he said, Rob, it just doesn't feel right. I don't know where else to go with this. I said, Ian, I'm also kind of in a catch-22 here because I feel like I've done everything I can. His part exchange that he'd put into me, when you fired that up in the morning, it kind of struggled finding the cold start level. So it sort of hunted around on the revs. And when I looked into it, often this could be something to do with the Vanos, which is actually quite an expensive fix. I thought, you know what it is? He's not happy with the car I've sold him. I'm not 100% confident with the car that he's brought into me. So we'll just rewind the deal. He thought I walked on water because he got his BMW back with a full tank, by the way, because it had like half a tank when it came in. So I topped it up just to apologise more than anything because he's a really nice bloke. Now, it turns out Ian and I have done some more deals since this, so doing the right thing was the right thing to do, regardless of whether or not ethically and morally it's the right thing to do. Either way, I've now got a C63 back in the unit, and it's got a problem and we don't know what the problem is. But it's only a problem that I don't think anyone else would have been able to tell. But once it was in my head, I couldn't get it out of my head. And I thought, I don't want to be retailing this car again and having the same issue. So what do we do about it? Anyway, I drove the car for another couple of weeks. And then MSL, which is a company down in Birmingham, basically do lots of different things with Mercedes. They make them very fast, very loud, very poppy, very spitting fire out. And they were doing a deal on a supercharger, and I've always wanted to supercharge a C63. So I did it. It was 12 grand, and what we basically did was supercharge the car. Normally they say you get about 680 horsepower. Ours made 709. And we put a Quaife limited slip diff on the back of it as well, just to make sure it could actually put the power down. Wow. That thing was absolutely bonkers. It was, once you turn traction control off, because with traction on, it just kind of held it back quite a bit. Traction control off, that thing left number 11s absolutely everywhere. It lights up fourth gear. It was beautiful. So, now I'm thinking, right, so we've supercharged it. If there's an issue with the gearbox, it would have shown by now, wouldn't it? So, clearly it's okay. So obviously I drove it for another couple of weeks. In fact, there's a video somewhere if you find it. I think it's having fun in a C63. Me, an R8 and a TT V6 went out and had some fun over on the northeast east coast. Anyway, I then sold the car again to a really, really nice bloke, proper enthusiast. Now all we'd done basically was add on the cost of the supercharger to the car and sold it again. So we didn't make any more money by doing it, but it made it a far more interesting car. So he bought the car. Took it away and was enjoying it. And I'd not heard from him for about a month. I thought, okay, cool. He then rings me. Rob, I'm stuck on the side of the motorway. The car is in limp mode. It's all over the place. Something's not right on it at all. It's just not moving. I'm like, right, okay. I've got AA cover. What do I do? So we'll get it recovered back to MSL. Get it recovered back to the boys. And let's just see whether or not we can work out what this problem is. So it gets it recovered back down to MSL, and one of the spark plugs isn't firing properly on one of the cylinders. So what they said is, right, let's just put a new coil pack on and see if it's all right. So they did it, and they ran it up to temp and everything, and it was okay. Everything was fine. So they didn't at this stage compress and test it, which probably would have been a good idea in hindsight. Got the car back to the customer. Customer's happy, thinks I walk on water. Wow, you've sorted it. A week later, same problem. So we then recovered the car back to MSL and said, look, it's the same issue. What do you think the problem is? They did a compression test. Unfortunately, it had destroyed one of the piston rings in cylinder 6, I want to say. Engine rebuild job. I decided to suck it up. Now, I'd put a warranty on the car with a company called Momentum at the time. They went out and looked at the car and they said, yes, your engine's covered for piston ring failure. However, it's not that's happened, is the fueling's been off, and that's what's caused the piston ring to fail. So we're not going to pay out. And I just put a warranty on for 2,000 quid with an Audi R8 with them at the time. So I was a bit annoyed, to say the least. Anyway, I swallowed the bill at MSL, and I want to say it was about 5 or 6 grand to rebuild the engine, which actually isn't that bad. To pull an engine out, rebuild it, put it back in. So we then sent the car back to the customer. Customer's very happy, thinks I walk on water, and we don't hear from him for about another month. He then rings again. The car's misfiring again, Rob. Oh, for God's sake. So we took it back to MSL, and they checked the car again, and it is low on compression on exactly the same cylinder where it was low on compression before. Oh. So, it's another engine rebuild. Now, to be fair to MSL, and by the way, there is absolutely no discredit to them whatsoever in this video. The guy that owns the place, Acid, I got on really well with, and he said, look, Rob, we've rebuilt the engine before, we're warrantying it, so if there's anything wrong with that engine, we're going to put it right. And he did. I didn't get another bill from them. And basically, they rebuilt the engine again, and they worked out that actually the problem wasn't that it was a weak piston ring in the first place, is that actually one of the injectors was overfueling or underfueling. So they kind of put their hands up and went, Rob, we probably should have spotted that the first time round. We made a little bit of an assumption that it was a piston ring that was just kind of went over time. We've now fixed it, we've repaired it, we've got all the injectors right, everything's good to go. So we sent the car back to the customer. And he thinks I'll walk on water again because Rob's paid for it. Little did he know, Acid had paid for it. So big shout out MSL, like genuinely really good. If you've got an AMG, they are the boys. And if something goes wrong, they come to the party. So, you know, proper guys. So I then think, right, everything's okay now. We've not heard back from the customer. We're all sweet. 2 weeks go by. Oh, I can feel the pain from this journey. 2 weeks go by and I get a phone call from the customer. It's not changing gear properly. Right. The gearbox was properly all over the place. I'm like, oh. So we send out recovery again, get the car picked up, send the car back to MSL because we trust them, they know what they're doing. He said, Rob, it's your torque converter. So we now know what was wrong in the gearbox in the first place. It just took. We're coming up to 6 months now from when I originally bought the car. It's taken 6 months, 12 grand's worth of supercharger, 5 grand's worth of engine rebuild, and now 500 quid's worth of torque converter plus the labour to fit it. So we went back to MSL. I ended up picking the torque converter up from Harrogate Mercedes. We've got a really good relationship with them. It was 500 quid. I know it should have been a lot more. Drove it down to Birmingham myself in the back of an X5, which is a story for another day, that car. Brought it into MSL. They redid the torque converter, got it back to the customer. He now thinks I walk on water. However, he's starting to get a little bit annoyed, as you can imagine. Fast forward to about 2 months down the road. And Acid sends me a photograph of the car at MSL. I was like, oh no, please, this can't go on any longer. And I rung him, I said, Acid, mate, what's wrong with it now? Please, help. And he went, oh no, it's not a problem, someone else has bought it. Oh, they've come in for an oil change. Oh, I mean, I will never modify a car in such a way again and then be stupid enough to retail it to the general public and leave me absolutely nowhere to go with it at all. I totally get modifying cars, and I've got an Impreza in there, and I'll talk you through that another day. I've spent a fortune on that car. I get it, I enjoy it, it's exciting, but this is probably one of the biggest mistakes that I'd made since buying and selling the cars, and a mistake that I will never make again. So anyway, the customer ended up selling the car. I believe he got pretty much what he bought it for off me, back on the car, so he's happy. Acid swallowed a bill on an engine rebuild. I've swallowed a bill on an engine rebuild. I ended up backwards on the car. Unfortunately, the cost fell into a different tax year in the business, so I couldn't even offset it against the margin anymore. It just had to come out of next year's profit. It was painful at best. Anyway, so that, my friends, is one of my stupidest mistakes. However, since then, I've got it wrong even worse. So hopefully you found that interesting. Just a little short video for you. I'm now going to finish my coffee, sat in the office, and think about what more stupid cars I can buy. Oh, I've got something else going on at the minute. I have just bought a Porsche from Ireland. I've never met the bloke, and I've just sent him north of 70 grand, and he's gone quiet. So we're doing a video on that coming up. Hopefully the car turns up and I don't have to get on a plane and go to Ireland. We make these mistakes. Anyway, cheers. Thanks for watching.